After 25 heartbreaking years of searching, she finally reunites with her estranged father. But his devastating confession about why he disappeared reveals a shocking story of racism and betrayal that changes everything. What he reveals next will leave you absolutely stunned. The story begins with a montage of Gabrielle's life, a woman in her late 30s who has spent decades trying to piece together the mystery of her father's disappearance. As a young black girl growing up in the Midwest, Gabrielle always felt the hollow ache of her father's absence. Her mother, Denise, was fiercely loving but guarded, rarely speaking of the man who had vanished from their lives when Gabrielle was only 5. We flash back to a sunlit day in 1998, when Gabrielle, at just 5 years old, sits on the front porch of their small, worn-down house. Her father, Marcus, a tall man with a warm laugh and calloused hands, is braiding her hair. "You're my little princess," he says, kissing her forehead. That was the last day she saw him. Her mother's words from that time echo in Gabrielle's mind. "Your daddy loves you, baby. He's just gone for now." Now an adult, Gabrielle sits in her apartment surrounded by stacks of old newspapers, torn photographs and handwritten letters. Her voiceover reveals the depths of her anguish. "I thought I could let it go. But every year that passed, I felt the hole in my heart grow bigger. I needed to know why he left, why he didn't come back for me." Gabrielle had spent years searching, combing through public records, hiring private investigators, and following every lead. But each time, the trail went cold. Finally, in a dimly lit office late one night, Gabrielle sits across from a private investigator. He slides a folder across the desk. "I found him," he says, his voice careful. Gabrielle's hands tremble as she opens the folder. Inside is a photo of a man, much older now but unmistakably her father. The PI continues. "He's been living in Louisiana. But Gabrielle, there's something you need to know. He didn't just leave. He might have had a reason." With only an address and her heart pounding, Gabrielle boards a bus to Louisiana. Along the way, she reflects on what finding him might mean. Her internal monologue gives voice to her fears. What if he doesn't remember me? What if he doesn't want to see me? And what if the truth is worse than I imagined? The bus pulls into a small, sleepy town. Gabrielle steps off, clutching the folder like a lifeline. She makes her way to a modest house on the edge of town, the setting sun casting a golden glow on the overgrown yard. From the porch, she sees him. An older man, bent slightly with age, working on a wooden chair. For a moment her breath catches in her throat. She whispers to herself, "That's him." As she takes a hesitant step forward, he looks up, locking eyes with her. Time seems to stop as she prepares to speak, but the weight of 25 years holds her back. The screen fades to black with Gabrielle's voice trembling. Gabrielle's voice trembles as she says, "Dad?" The word hangs in the air, fragile and uncertain, as though it might shatter the delicate moment. Marcus freezes, his weathered hands gripping the chair he's working on. Slowly, he turns to face her, his eyes wide with shock. "Gabrielle," he whispers, barely audible, as if saying her name might prove he's dreaming. Tears stream down her face and she nods. "It's me. I've been looking for you for so long." Marcus stumbles forward, his hands trembling. "My baby girl. I never thought." His voice cracks, and he pulls her into an embrace. Gabrielle clings to him, feeling the rough texture of his shirt and the faint smell of sawdust, sensations she hadn't experienced since she was a child. The emotional reunion is interrupted by an older woman stepping out onto the porch. She's holding a tray of lemonade, her expression shifting from confusion to unease as she sees Gabrielle. "Marcus." "Who's this?" she asks, her tone sharp but laced with concern. Marcus glances at her, then back at Gabrielle. "This is my daughter, Marlene." "This is Gabrielle." Marlene's face stiffens. "Your daughter?" The words sound more like a challenge than a question. Gabrielle feels the warmth of the embrace dissipate as Marcus steps back, his posture tense. "Let's go inside," he says softly. The interior of the house is modest but tidy, filled with handmade furniture and family photos. Gabrielle's eyes scan the room, noticing there are no pictures of her or her mother. The absence is like a punch to the gut, They sit at the kitchen table, and Marcus clears his throat, looking everywhere but at Gabrielle. "I don't even know where to start," he says. Gabrielle's voice is firm but thick with emotion. "Start with why you left us. Why did you abandon me and Mum? I've spent my whole life wondering if I wasn't enough for you to stay." Marcus exhales deeply, his hands shaking as he holds a glass of water. "I didn't leave because I wanted to," he begins, his voice heavy. "I left because I had to." Gabrielle's brow furrows. What does that even mean? Marcus hesitates, his eyes welling with tears. Back then, things weren't easy. Not for a black man trying to provide for his family in a town like ours. Your mother and I, we were happy, but there were people who didn't want to see us thrive. Gabrielle's heart sinks as memories of whispered conversations between her mother and neighbors resurface. She had never understood them as a child, but now they take on a new meaning. Marcus leans forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. "There was a man, a powerful man in town who didn't like me. Didn't like that I was starting my own business. Didn't like that your mother and I were happy. He came to me one night with 2 other men, all of them drunk. They told me that if I didn't leave town, they'd make sure I regretted it." Gabriel's stomach churns. "Why didn't you tell Mum? Why didn't you fight back?" Marcus's face contorts with anguish. "Because they didn't just threaten me, Gabrielle. They threatened you. They said they'd burn our house down with all of us inside. And I knew they meant it." Gabrielle grips the edge of the table, her knuckles white. "So you just left. You didn't even try to protect us. You ran, and we were left to pick up the pieces." Her voice cracks, and Marcus flinches as though she'd struck him. "I thought I was protecting you by leaving. I thought if I wasn't there, they'd leave you and your mother alone." The tension in the room is palpable. Marlene, who had been standing silently in the corner, finally speaks. "Marcus, you've never told me any of this. All these years I thought you just walked away from your first family." Marcus looks at her, his guilt etched on his face. "I didn't know how to tell you. It's haunted me every day of my life." Gabrielle stands abruptly, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Haunted you? You don't get to play the victim here, Dad. Mom worked 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. I grew up thinking I wasn't good enough for you to stick around. And now you tell me you left because of some racist threats? Do you know how much I've hated you for what you did?" Marcus reaches out, his voice breaking. "Gabrielle, please, I know I failed you, but there's more to this story. Something I need to tell you before you judge me completely." Gabrielle freezes, her heart pounding. What could possibly make this any worse? Marcus looks down at the table, tears streaming down his face. "The truth about why they wanted me gone. It's not just about me. It's about you." The screen fades to black as Gabrielle's voice whispers, "What do you mean, me?" The room is suffocatingly quiet, except for the ticking of an old clock on the wall. Gabrielle's mind races as she processes Marcus's last words. "It's about you." Her chest tightens as fear and anger collide. "What do you mean it's about me?" she demands, her voice trembling. Marcus avoids her gaze, his hands fidgeting on the table. Finally, he takes a deep breath. "Gabrielle, those men didn't just hate me because I was black and building a life for us. They had a deeper reason, something I kept from you and your mother to protect you." Gabrielle's frustration boils over. "Stop talking in riddles, Dad. Just tell me the truth." Marcus looks her in the eyes, his voice low but resolute. "One of those men was your grandfather, your mother's father." The words hit Gabrielle like a punch to the gut. "What? No, that's impossible. Grandpa died before I was born." Marcus shakes his head. "That's what your mum told you, but it wasn't true. Your grandfather was alive when you were a baby. He was a powerful man in that town, a man who believed in keeping things the way they'd always been, segregated and controlled by people like him. He hated me for marrying your mother." Gabrielle stares at him, her legs feeling weak. She sinks back into her chair. You're saying Mom knew this? She lied to me? Marcus nods solemnly. She thought she was protecting you from the truth. She didn't want you to know that the man who threatened to destroy us was her own father. Gabrielle's mind floods with memories of her mother's hushed warnings and stern refusals to talk about the past. It all makes a twisted kind of sense now, but it only deepens the ache in her chest. Why would he do that? How could someone hate their own family so much? Gabrielle asks, tears streaming down her face. Marcus's voice hardens. Because he believed in control. To him, your mother betrayed her race by marrying me. And when I refused to bow to his threats, he made it clear I wasn't welcome in his family, or this world. I thought leaving was the only way to keep you safe. Gabrielle clenches her fists. So you let him win. You let him destroy our family. Marcus's shoulders slump, his voice filled with regret. I thought if I stayed, I'd get us all killed. I thought if I left, you and your mom would have a chance to live in peace. But I see now. I was wrong. From the corner of the room, Marlene speaks up, her voice tentative. Marcus, I never knew. You always said you left because of work. You never told me about this. Marcus looks at her, his face etched with sorrow. Because I didn't want to drag you into it. I thought if I buried it deep enough I could move on. But the past has a way of catching up with you. Gabrielle stands abruptly, her chair toppling over. So that's it? You just ran and started over with a new family. Did you ever think about coming back? About me? Marcus looks at her, his eyes brimming with tears. Every single day. But I was ashamed. I failed you and your mother, and I didn't know how to fix it. Gabrielle glares at him, her pain spilling out like a flood. You didn't just fail us. You abandoned us. And now you want me to forgive you because you were scared? Do you have any idea what it was like growing up without you? Watching Mom work herself to exhaustion because you weren't there? Do you know how much I hated you? Marcus's voice cracks. I hated myself more. Gabrielle storms out of the house, the screen showing her pacing in the front yard, her hands trembling. She looks at the sky, tears streaming down her face, as memories of her childhood play in her mind. Her mother crying late at night, the empty chair at the dinner table, the feeling of never being whole. Inside the house, Marcus buries his face in his hands. Marlene hesitates before placing a hand on his shoulder. You need to go to her, she says softly. Marcus nods, wiping his face, and steps outside. Marcus finds Gabrielle sitting on the porch steps, staring at the horizon. He sits down beside her, the silence heavy between them. I know I can't fix what I broke, he says quietly. But I'm here now, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it right if you'll let me. Gabrielle doesn't look at him, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know if I can forgive you, but I need time to figure it out. Marcus nods. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere this time. Gabrielle finally looks at him, her eyes filled with a mix of anger, pain, and longing. There's still one thing I don't understand. If Grandpa hated you so much, why did Mom stay with you? Why didn't she leave? Marcus looks away, his face darkening. Because she had a secret of her own, one that made things even more dangerous than I realized. Gabrielle's breath catches. What secret? The screen fades to black as Marcus whispers, She knew something that could have ruined him, and it's the reason they wanted me gone. The screen opens with Gabrielle and Marcus still sitting on the porch. The evening sky fades into a deep orange, and cicadas hum in the background. Gabrielle's mind races as she processes Marcus's cryptic words. She knew something that could have ruined him. What do you mean? What secret could Mom have possibly kept from me? Gabrielle asks, her voice trembling. Marcus hesitates, his eyes fixed on the horizon. Your mother didn't just marry me out of love, Gabrielle. She was defying her father in a way he couldn't tolerate. She knew his darkest secret, one that could have destroyed his power in that town, and she used it to protect us. Gabrielle's eyes narrow. What secret? Marcus exhales deeply and begins. Your grandfather. He wasn't just any man in town. He was tied to something bigger, something dangerous. He was part of a group that controlled the local businesses, the police, even the courts. They made their money through intimidation and corruption. Your mum found out when she was young. Gabrielle's heart sinks. What did she find out? She found out they weren't just taking bribes and running scams. They were involved in something much worse, smuggling people out of town, forcing them to disappear. Some of those people were black business owners who refused to sell their land or go along with their plans. Others were people who just didn't fit into their vision of the town. Gabrielle stares at him, her breath catching. So Mum, what? Blackmailed him. Marcus nods grimly. She threatened to expose him, to tell the newspapers everything, but she knew that wouldn't be enough. If she went public, he would destroy her. Or worse. So she stayed silent. As long as he left us alone. Marcus leans forward, his voice heavy. But when your mom married me and had you, it was a breaking point for him. He saw you as a symbol of his shame, proof that his own daughter had defied his vision of what the family should be. That's when the threat started. Gabrielle feels a lump in her throat. So you're saying Mum sacrificed her own happiness to keep him at bay? And you left us to make things worse for her? Marcus flinches. I didn't know how deep it went until after I left. I thought if I was gone, it would take the target off you and your mum. But all I did was leave her to fight alone. Gabrielle gets up and paces the porch, her voice rising. You didn't just leave her to fight alone. You left me. Do you have any idea what it was like growing up without answers, without a dad? I thought it was something I did wrong. Marcus's voice cracks. You didn't do anything wrong, Gabrielle. I was trying to protect you the only way I knew how. But I see now. I was a coward. I should have stayed and fought with her. The door creaks open, and Marlene steps onto the porch. Marcus, you've been carrying this guilt for so long, and I think it's time you stop hiding from it. Gabrielle deserves the truth. Marcus nods, tears in his eyes. I'm trying, Marlene. But the truth doesn't make it right. Marlene places a hand on Gabrielle's shoulder. Your father's not perfect. None of us are. But you have a chance to rebuild something here. Even if it's not what you imagined. Gabrielle turns to Marcus. So what happened to Grandpa? If Mom knew all this, why didn't she tell me when I got older? Marcus pauses. Before she died, she wrote you a letter. She gave it to a neighbor to hold on to until you were ready. Gabrielle's eyes widen. What? A letter? Why didn't anyone tell me about this? Marcus looks at her with sorrow. The neighbor didn't know where you were after your mum passed. I only found out about it when I came back to the area a few years ago. Marcus stands and walks into the house, returning with a weathered envelope. This is from your mum. I didn't read it. It wasn't mine to read. But I think it's time you did. Gabrielle stares at the envelope, her hands trembling as she takes it. The room goes quiet as she carefully opens it. The screen focuses on Gabrielle's face as she reads the first few lines. Her eyes widen, her lips parting in shock. What does it say? Marcus asks cautiously. Gabrielle looks up, her voice barely a whisper. Mum didn't just keep his secret. She lied to me about everything. The screen fades to black, leaving viewers hanging on the edge of their seats. Gabrielle sits frozen on the porch steps, clutching the letter as if it might vanish. Marcus and Marlene wait silently, the tension in the air almost unbearable. Slowly, Gabrielle begins to read aloud, her voice trembling. My dearest Gabrielle, if you're reading this, then you've come searching for answers. There's so much I wish I could have told you while I was alive, but some truths are too heavy to speak. I made choices I thought were protecting you, but in doing so, I may have stolen pieces of your life that were never mine to take. Gabrielle's voice catches, but she forces herself to keep reading. Your grandfather was not the man you were told about. He was powerful, yes, but that power came from darkness. He built his life on the backs of people he destroyed, families like ours who dared to challenge his control. When I married your father and had you, it was more than defiance. It was a declaration that I would not be a part of his hate. But my resistance came at a cost. Gabrielle glances at Marcus before continuing, her hands shaking. Gabrielle, the reason your father left wasn't just because of threats against him. It was because of me. Your grandfather gave me an ultimatum. Convince Marcus to leave, or he would ensure you never saw your first birthday. I begged your father to go, told him it was for your safety, but I never told him the full truth. I didn't tell him it was me who made the deal. I thought I was saving you, but I see now I was only breaking you both. Gabrielle's voice falters, and tears stream down her face. Marcus looks stunned, his jaw tightening as he processes the revelation. You made him leave, Gabrielle whispers, her voice barely audible. She crumples the letter in her hands, her emotions overwhelming her. All this time I hated him for abandoning us, but it was you pushed him away. Marcus rises, his fists clenched at his sides, his voice shaking with anger and sorrow. She didn't tell me any of this. I left thinking I was protecting you both. All these years, I thought I failed you. I thought I was the coward. Gabrielle stands glaring at him. And what about you, Dad? Why didn't you fight harder? You just left. You let her send you away. Marcus takes a deep breath, his voice heavy. I thought I was doing the right thing, Gabrielle. I thought if I stayed, you'd all be in danger. But now I see I should have fought for you. I should have stayed no matter what. Marlene, sensing the rising tension, gently takes the letter and continues reading aloud. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me, Gabrielle, but I need you to know one thing. Your father didn't leave because he stopped loving us. He left because he loved you enough to put your safety above his pride. And even after he was gone, he never stopped being a part of you. Every laugh, every determination, every dream you have, it all comes from him. I hope one day you'll find him, and when you do, I hope you can forgive me for the lies I told to keep us alive. The room falls silent as Marlene places the letter on the table. Gabrielle sits back down, burying her face in her hands. The weight of her mother's choices, her father's absence, and her own pain feels unbearable. Marcus speaks softly, his voice filled with regret. I never stopped thinking about you, Gabrielle. Every day I wondered what you were doing, what kind of woman you'd grow up to be. I let my guilt keep me away for too long, but I swear to you, I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make this right. Gabrielle looks up at him, her expression conflicted. I don't know if I can just forgive you. This isn't something that can be fixed overnight. Marcus nods solemnly. I don't expect it to be. But I'm here now, and I'll be here every day if you let me. Gabrielle glances at Marlene, who offers her a gentle nod. After a long pause, Gabrielle whispers, I don't know how to move forward. But I don't want to live in the past anymore. Marcus reaches into his pocket and pulls out an old, worn photo of Gabrielle as a child, the edges frayed and faded. I kept this with me everywhere I went, he says, handing it to her. It was my reminder of the life I wanted to come back to. Gabrielle takes the photo, her fingers tracing the image. Her lips tremble as she finally allows herself to cry, not from anger, but from the release of years of pent-up pain. As the sun sets, Gabrielle and Marcus sit side by side on the porch, not speaking, but sharing a quiet moment of understanding. Marlene brings out 3 glasses of iced tea, setting them down with a smile. Gabrielle looks at Marcus, her voice soft but steady. This doesn't mean everything's okay, but maybe we can start over. Marcus nods, his voice breaking. That's all I've ever wanted. The camera pans out, showing the 3 of them on the porch as the evening settles in, symbolizing the fragile yet hopeful beginning of healing. Gabrielle's voiceover carries the final message. I spent 25 years searching for the truth. And while it didn't give me the closure I wanted, it gave me something else, something I never thought I'd have again, a chance to rebuild what was lost.